There are moments in life when the air feels heavy, though the sky is clear, when the heart aches without explanation, and when the mind is flooded with doubt, though nothing visible has shifted. These are not accidents of the psyche, nor random misfires of thought, but subtle fingerprints of an invisible struggle, a quiet war woven into the fabric of our days. This is the reality of spiritual attacks, forces, seen and unseen, that press against the soul not to destroy it outright, but to drain, distort, and derail it. If you have ever awakened feeling inexplicably burdened, as though an unseen weight pressed upon your chest, or walked into a room and felt your light suddenly dimmed, then you have brushed against the edges of this hidden battlefield. Before we dive deeper, let me say this. Stay with me until the very end of this exploration, for what you will discover may well change how you perceive your own life and its struggles. And if you have not yet done so, subscribe to this channel, for these truths are threads in a larger tapestry we are weaving together, a community bound by the desire to awaken, defend, and rise. To recognize spiritual attacks is to step beyond the veil of the ordinary. We live in an age obsessed with surfaces, images carefully curated, lives projected through glass screens, realities trimmed into fragments. Yet, beneath the shine, a deeper theater unfolds, one that transcends the calendar dates and the buzzing notifications of modern life. Here, the soul is both the stage and the warrior, and every choice, every thought, every moment of faith or despair becomes part of the drama. A spiritual attack does not announce itself with fanfare. It moves quietly, like a shadow that slips into a house through the smallest crack. Its greatest strategy is often subtlety, to make you believe that what you feel is nothing more than coincidence, fatigue, or an unexplainable downturn of luck. But if we pause long enough, if we look with a more ancient gaze, we see that these patterns align with something greater, something intentional. Imagine your life as a lamp lit in the darkness. The brighter it shines, the more moths are drawn to it, but so too are forces that wish to smother it. To recognize a spiritual attack is not to live in paranoia, but to become awake to the reality that your light matters, that it attracts not only wonder, but also resistance. The very presence of struggle often reveals the significance of your path. Just as the strongest winds batter the tallest mountains, so too do the most persistent unseen currents buffet the souls walking closest to their purpose. And yet, it is precisely within these tempests that one learns to anchor, to discern, and to see. Our ancestors across cultures and centuries spoke of this reality in different tongues, but with a singular recognition. Some called them evil spirits, others named them trials of the soul. Still others spoke of illusions woven by darker hands to bend humanity away from truth. In modern times, we have dulled these stories into metaphors. But what if they were not metaphors at all? What if your exhaustion that no rest can cure, your recurring doubts that strike just before you are about to make progress, your sudden conflicts with those closest to you, all carried echoes of a deeper manipulation, a pressure upon your spirit from forces that cannot be explained by material logic alone? This introduction is not to frighten you, but to awaken you. For the greatest danger of a spiritual attack is not the attack itself, but the blindness to it. A soldier who walks onto a battlefield believing it is a meadow will never raise his shield, never guard his heart, never sharpen his perception. And yet, if you can name the storm, if you can see the invisible hands shaping it, you are already half victorious. Recognition is the first shield, awareness the first weapon. Without these, one becomes a puppet dancing to strings that seem self-made but are in truth manipulated from beyond. There is also a paradox to behold here. The very fact that spiritual attacks exist testifies to your importance in the cosmic story. No thief breaks into an empty house, no army lays siege to a barren wasteland. Resistance arises only where there is something of value to resist. If you feel pressed, weakened, or repeatedly undermined in subtle and unexplainable ways, it may not be because you are powerless, but because you are potent. Spiritual pressure is often a distorted compliment, a sign that your life carries a resonance that others, seen or unseen, wish to silence. The language of these attacks is rarely straightforward. They speak through discouragement, through sudden misalignments, through a creeping fog that clouds the mind and makes the horizon seem distant. Sometimes they manifest in outer events. Relationships that fracture without cause, opportunities that collapse at the brink of breakthrough, financial burdens that appear like weeds choking a newly planted garden. Other times they take root inwardly, in cycles of doubt, shame, fear, or restlessness that seem to renew themselves each time you think you have escaped them. To the untrained eye, these are just bad days or unfortunate coincidences. But to the soul that has begun to awaken, they reveal a pattern, a choreography of resistance designed to keep the spirit from soaring. It is here in this introduction that I invite you to consider your life not merely as a sequence of random events, but as part of a grander, unseen struggle. You are not simply a body navigating the earth. You are a being of spirit, carrying within you a light that ripples through dimensions you cannot fully see. Recognizing a spiritual attack, then, is not about paranoia or superstition. It is about wisdom, about knowing the weather patterns of the soul as clearly as one would read the clouds before a storm. It is about discerning when the heaviness in the air is more than fatigue, when the arguments that arise are more than miscommunication, when the sense of despair is more than mere mood. And so, this journey begins. As we move forward, we will not merely catalog signs and symptoms. Instead, we will walk a path that threads through philosophy, allegory, and lived experience, uncovering the way spiritual attacks weave themselves into the tapestry of life. We will explore not only how they can be seen, but also why they come, what they reveal, and how they may ultimately be transformed into stepping stones rather than stumbling blocks. For just as the night sky reveals its stars only in darkness, so too do spiritual attacks reveal hidden truths about your strength, your calling, and your unshakable place in the cosmic design. This is the beginning of a longer conversation, a descent into hidden layers, where unseen battles shape visible lives. Hold fast to the awareness that by naming these forces, by learning their patterns, you disarm them. For the shadow loses its power when the candle is lit, and the unseen loses its terror when the eyes of the soul are opened. To understand how to recognize spiritual attacks in your life, you must first immerse yourself in the very landscape where they unfold. This is not a flat terrain where one thing leads plainly to another, but a layered reality, one part visible, one part invisible, both constantly interwoven. The visible is what we measure, touch, and name. The bills on the counter, the arguments at the table, the sudden sickness that slows your stride. The invisible is what pulses beneath those events. The shift in atmosphere before the conflict arises, the sense of heaviness in a room before words are spoken, the inexplicable inner trembling when everything around you seems calm. To move through life without recognizing both layers is to read only half of a sacred manuscript, missing the meanings inked in invisible letters. The first theme to understand is that of illusion versus truth. Spiritual attacks are designed to cloak truth in garments of falsehood. They are distortions, not outright creations. Like smoke drifting across a clear sky, they obscure the light but do not destroy it. Imagine your inner being as a mirror reflecting divine radiance. A spiritual attack does not shatter the mirror. Instead, it fogs the surface, convincing you that the light is gone when in fact it is only hidden. The danger lies in believing the fog more real than the reflection beneath. Doubt, fear, despair, these are smokescreens. They whisper, "You are weak, you are lost, you are unloved." But the truth beneath the smoke is unchanged. You remain luminous, connected, chosen, and capable. Recognition comes when you pause and ask, Is this thought my true reflection, or is it smoke upon the glass? The second guiding theme is resistance as validation. It is natural to believe that hardship signals failure, that attacks mean you are straying from your path. Yet, in the architecture of spirit, resistance often testifies to alignment. The very pressure you feel may indicate that you are nearing a point of breakthrough. Consider the image of a seed pushing upward through soil. The darker the soil, the greater the resistance, but that resistance proves growth. Without the pressure, the seed would never rise. Spiritual attacks often crescendo just as new light is about to enter. They are last-ditch efforts to hold you captive in a previous state. Thus, when recognizing an attack, you must reframe your instinct. Instead of saying, "This means I am failing," you may whisper, "This may mean I am close to rising." Another crucial concept is fragmentation. The nature of a spiritual attack is not always dramatic, but often subtle. Rather than striking with a single blow, it chips away piece by piece, fragmenting your wholeness. One day you feel slightly drained, the next slightly more irritable, the next just a little more doubtful. Soon, without noticing, you are a house with 1,000 tiny cracks, and the light inside seems dim. Recognition demands that you notice these small fractures before they widen. Just as a skilled sailor notes the faintest shift in wind before the storm, so too must you learn to recognize the earliest tremors of spiritual interference. There is also the theme of cycles. Many who suffer spiritual attacks feel trapped in repeating patterns. The same relationship struggles re-emerge despite efforts to heal. The same financial blockages recur. The same shadows of doubt return after each success. This is not mere chance, but an intentional loop, a cycle designed to drain energy through repetition. Recognition comes when you see that the loop is not natural but imposed, not random but engineered. To awaken to the pattern is to already weaken its grip. For the cycle thrives on blindness. Once seen, its spell begins to break. And then there is the theme of atmosphere. Not every battle is fought with swords or visible blows. Many are fought with shifts in the unseen air around you. Have you ever entered a room that looked perfectly fine but felt suffocating? Have you ever spoken with someone whose words were kind yet left you strangely diminished? The atmosphere is the canvas upon which spiritual attacks are painted. To become sensitive to atmosphere is to notice the invisible climate shaping your inner weather. Recognition begins by asking not only, "What is happening?" but also, "What am I feeling beneath the surface of what is happening?" Finally, there is the theme of identity. At their core, spiritual attacks target not your circumstances, but your sense of who you are. The assault is rarely about the outer event. It is about what that event tries to tell you about yourself. A failed project whispers, "You are incompetent." A broken relationship hisses, "You are unworthy of love." A sudden sickness suggests, "You are fragile and doomed." But these messages are lies clothed in circumstance. The deeper reality is untouched. Recognition requires remembering that the attack is aimed at your identity, because your identity is the wellspring of your destiny. If you forget who you are, you will surrender everything else without resistance. When these themes converge, illusion, resistance, fragmentation, cycles, atmosphere, and identity, they form the architecture of a spiritual attack. And in naming them, in seeing them for what they are, you already begin to disarm them. To recognize is to reclaim vision. To reclaim vision is to reclaim power. The battlefield is not only out there, but within. Not only in the seen, but in the unseen. And yet, every recognition of truth pierces the fog. Every act of awareness lights a torch in the darkness. This is not knowledge to inspire fear, but to cultivate wisdom. For wisdom allows you to see beyond appearances, to understand that life is not simply a string of accidents, but a sacred text, written in visible ink and in visible flame. When you recognize a spiritual attack, You are not just naming a problem, you are stepping into your true role as a guardian of your own light, a co-creator in the great unfolding of destiny. To recognize spiritual attacks in your life is not only a matter of theory or heightened awareness, it is also the art of seeing through stories, metaphors, and archetypes that whisper timeless truths. Humanity has always carried its wisdom in the form of tales, parables, and myths, for they mirror the hidden movements of the soul more clearly than any diagram or formula could. When we explore these narratives, we enter a realm where symbols carry the weight of reality, and allegory becomes a lantern illuminating the paths our spirits must tread. Consider first the story of the wanderer in the desert. The wanderer begins his journey filled with faith and a sense of direction, guided by a distant star. Yet as the days lengthen, the sun scorches, the sand blinds, and the horizon stretches endlessly. At night, whispers ride upon the wind. Turn back. You are lost. The star you follow is but an illusion. The wanderer's greatest struggle is not thirst or hunger, but the insidious erosion of his belief in the star. This is the essence of a spiritual attack. It is not the desert itself. It is the voice that seeks to make you forget why you entered the desert at all. Recognition begins when the wanderer says, "These whispers are not mine. They are shadows testing my resolve." The desert becomes not a curse, but a crucible, for the star remains unchanged, even if the wind insists otherwise. Another tale unfolds in the imagery of the garden. Imagine a garden of luminous flowers, each petal reflecting an aspect of your soul, your courage, your kindness, your creativity, your love. The gardener within you waters them daily, though sometimes with trembling hands. A spiritual attack comes not as a raging fire, but as subtle weeds that creep into the soil. They do not announce their arrival. They blend in, coiling quietly around the roots, drinking the water meant for the flowers. At first, the flowers simply look tired, their glow dimmed. You think, perhaps I did not water them enough. Yet the truth is that the life force has been siphoned away by something hidden. Recognition occurs when the gardener bends low, peers past the surface, and sees the invasive tendrils strangling the roots. In this way, the garden is both allegory and mirror. Your soul, like the garden, requires vigilance, not paranoia, but a cultivated watchfulness that notices when something unnatural has entered the soil. There is also the tale of the mirror maze. A seeker enters a grand hall filled with countless reflections, each mirror distorting his image slightly. Some elongate, others shrink, others fracture his form into shards. The seeker runs from one mirror to the next, trying to determine which reflection is real. A spiritual attack often resembles this maze. It multiplies illusions, scattering fragments of your identity until you no longer trust your own reflection. Recognition comes when the seeker stops running and remembers that the true self is not found in any mirror, but in the stillness within. By grounding himself in his essence, the maze loses its grip and the distorted mirrors become powerless. Let us not forget the ancient allegory of the night traveler. He walks with a lantern through a dense forest. With every step forward, a shadowy figure lurks just beyond the circle of light, whispering doubts. The traveler cannot outrun it, for it moves with him. Yet, as he continues, he notices something profound. The shadow never steps into the lantern's glow. It is always at the edge, waiting in the dark. The realization dawns: the shadow feeds on fear, not on truth. Spiritual attacks often linger at the margins of your awareness, feeding on what you fear most. Recognition is not about banishing shadows forever, but about carrying your lantern faithfully, refusing to let fear extinguish the flame. And then there is the story of the tower. Imagine a radiant tower being built stone by stone, each block representing a step of progress in your spiritual or personal growth. As the tower rises, so too does the wind. At first it is gentle, Then it grows fierce, as though the very air resents the ascent. This is the paradox. The higher the tower climbs, the more resistance it faces. A spiritual attack, then, is the storm that intensifies as your purpose rises. Recognition allows you to see that the wind does not mean the tower should stop. It means the tower has become visible, a beacon that cannot be ignored. The storm testifies to the tower's significance, and each stone laid in defiance of the wind becomes a victory etched into eternity. These symbolic narratives echo a deeper truth. Spiritual attacks are not random. They are invitations in disguise, cloaked lessons that seek to teach as much as they test. The wanderer learns perseverance, the gardener vigilance, the seeker identity, the night traveler courage, the tower builder endurance. Each allegory mirrors a pattern in real life. When you find yourself in a desert season, a tangled garden, a maze of self-doubt, a forest of fear, or the storm against your tower, you are not alone. You are stepping into archetypal landscapes where countless souls have walked before, where resistance is a signpost rather than a dead end. Recognition then becomes more than defense. It becomes transformation. By seeing the attack as symbol, you reclaim power over it. What once seemed like meaningless suffering becomes mythic, part of a larger cosmic story. The desert becomes your teacher, the weeds your reminder, the mirrors your test, the shadows your training, the storm your consecration. When you adopt this vision, the attacks lose their venom, for you no longer see them as curses, but as cryptic invitations calling you into deeper strength. The greatest secret of these narratives is that they do not end in defeat. The wanderer finds the oasis, the gardener uproots the weeds, the seeker shatters the maze by remembering his essence, the night traveler emerges from the forest, the tower gleams above the storm. Each story arcs toward triumph, though the triumph emerges only through recognition and endurance. And so it is with your own life. The patterns that press against you are not final verdicts, but passages. To recognize them is to walk with wisdom. To walk with wisdom is to transform the very attacks meant to weaken you into stepping stones that lift you higher. The beauty of symbols and allegories lies in their power to awaken us, to stir the inner eye. Yet awareness that lives only in abstraction becomes like a flame trapped under glass, luminous but unable to warm. To recognize spiritual attacks fully, one must translate insight into daily life, weaving wisdom into the fabric of ordinary hours. For spiritual resistance is not a rare occurrence confined to mountaintop visions. It happens in kitchens and workplaces, in friendships and sleepless nights, in traffic jams and whispered prayers. It is not somewhere far away. It is here, in the immediacy of your lived experience. The first step toward integration is cultivating the art of noticing. Spiritual attacks rarely crash into your life like earthquakes. They arrive quietly, like a slow leak in a roof that only reveals itself after days of rain. In practice, this means learning to pause. Notice when your mood shifts suddenly, when peace drains from your chest without explanation, when the simple act of being kind feels like lifting a boulder. These are often signs that something beyond the visible has brushed against your spirit. By pausing to acknowledge the shift instead of dismissing it, you reclaim authority over your own state. What is hidden thrives in neglect, but loses strength when named. Equally important is the practice of guarding your atmosphere. You may not control the winds that blow against your life, but you can tend to the climate of your inner sanctuary. Consider the music you allow to play around you, the conversations you choose to enter, the words you speak even to yourself. Words, sounds, and energies are not passive. They either reinforce your shield or poke holes in it. If a certain environment consistently leaves you drained, it is not paranoia to notice this. It is discernment. To recognize a spiritual attack is to say, I am more than my emotions, more than this moment. I can choose what enters my space. Guarding your atmosphere is not isolation, it is stewardship. Integration also requires reframing conflict. Many times, spiritual attacks arrive dressed as interpersonal tension. An argument flares with a loved one over something trivial, leaving a wound that lingers. A co-worker's words sting more deeply than they should. Recognition here means remembering. This is not just about me and them. There may be a larger hand stirring this. Such awareness disarms the desire to escalate. Instead of reacting in rage, you can step back and see the unseen choreography. In that pause, you reclaim sovereignty. By refusing to feed the cycle of division, you break the loop that spiritual attacks seek to maintain. Another dimension of integration lies in cycles of weariness. There are seasons when you wake tired, though you've rested, when motivation evaporates before it reaches your hands. Rather than forcing yourself forward blindly, recognition means asking, "What is draining me unseen?" Sometimes it is not physical exhaustion, but spiritual depletion. The antidote is not always more sleep or more productivity, but renewal through prayer, meditation, stillness, or grounding practices that realign the soul. In doing this, you treat weariness not merely as weakness, but as a signal, a sign that your spirit has been in battle and requires replenishment. We must also speak of identity in practice. The sharpest aim of spiritual attack is to convince you of lies about yourself. It may say, "You are a failure," after one setback, or whisper, "You are unworthy of love," when someone disappoints you. Integration demands vigilance here. Whenever such thoughts arise, pause and ask, "Who is speaking? Is this the voice of my deepest self, or is this smoke meant to blind me?" This questioning becomes a spiritual practice. Each time you catch the lie, you prevent it from embedding itself in your identity. You strengthen the truth by repetition, by speaking over yourself words of light and affirmation until your spirit becomes fortified like iron. Practical recognition also means understanding timing. Often attacks intensify at thresholds when you are about to step into something new, begin a project, deepen a relationship, or rise into greater purpose. Watch for the pattern. If discouragement suddenly spikes right as you move toward progress, recognize it for what it is: resistance, not coincidence. This perspective prevents you from surrendering at the edge of breakthrough. It reframes the struggle as evidence that something significant lies on the other side of perseverance. Beyond individual practice, there is the communal dimension. Isolation is fertile ground for unseen resistance. Alone, you may begin to believe the whispers of worthlessness. But in the presence of others who carry light, the fog loses its density. This is why ancient traditions emphasized gathering, prayer circles, sacred songs, and shared rituals. In the modern context, this may mean surrounding yourself with people who remind you of your essence, who speak truth when you forget. To recognize a spiritual attack sometimes requires another pair of eyes. What you think is just a bad week might be, in truth, an attempt to fragment you, and someone outside your fog may see it more clearly than you can. And finally, practical integration calls for transforming the attacks themselves into stepping stones. When you recognize that a storm rises not to destroy you, but to test your resilience, you begin to use it as training. Each attack becomes a forge. The desert strengthens your faith. The weeds sharpen your vigilance. The mirrors clarify your identity. The shadow builds your courage. The storm amplifies your endurance. In this way, what was meant for your undoing becomes the very material of your becoming. This is not wishful thinking, but the secret alchemy of awareness, the ability to turn resistance into refinement. To live with this recognition is to walk with new eyes. You begin to see that nothing is wasted, that every weight pressing against you carries within it the seed of awakening. This shift does not make life effortless, but it does make it luminous. You stop interpreting every difficulty as evidence of failure and begin to see them as markers on a greater path. You become less reactive, more centered, more deliberate in your choices. You learn to hold your lantern high even in the forest, to guard your garden, to build your tower, to keep walking through the deserts. And so integration is not about escaping spiritual attacks, but about learning to navigate them with clarity. The aim is not to live untouched by struggle, but to live undefeated by it, to recognize the hidden architecture beneath your challenges, and to turn even the darkest nights into sanctuaries of growth. We have traveled through landscapes both symbolic and practical, tracing the contours of a reality that lies just beneath the surface of our daily lives. Spiritual attacks are not mere myths for the superstitious, nor abstract musings for the philosophical. They are lived experiences, quiet storms pressing against the human spirit, designed to cloud vision, drain strength, and fracture identity. And yet, what you now carry, the recognition of their presence, the wisdom of their patterns, the allegories that reveal their nature, and the practical tools to withstand them, is nothing less than a shield forged in awareness. At the heart of this journey lies a paradox. The very existence of spiritual resistance testifies to your significance. You are not a pawn in a meaningless world. You are a luminous being whose light attracts attention, both from forces that wish to nurture and those that seek to diminish. No army surrounds an empty fortress. No thief breaks into a barren house. If you are pressed, it is because you carry treasure. To know this is to reframe struggle, not as punishment, but as proof of value. Each attack is evidence that your presence on this earth matters, that your steps ripple into realms far beyond what your eyes can see. Think again of the stories we explored: the wanderer in the desert, the gardener, the seeker in the mirror maze, the night traveler, the tower builder. Each encountered resistance. Yet in every narrative, the resistance was not the end, but the threshold. The desert was crossed, the weeds uprooted, the mirrors shattered, the shadow held at bay, the tower risen. Your story, too, is written in this same cosmic ink. You may feel as though you walk through barren sands, or tend a garden invaded by weeds, or stumble through halls of distorted reflections, or carry a lantern through a forest alive with shadows. But know this: every step you take in recognition, every pause you make to remember who you truly are, every refusal to yield to lies brings you closer to the triumphant arc already inscribed within your soul's journey. The transformational call, then, is simple but profound. Do not walk blind. Begin to watch your life with the eyes of the soul. When heaviness arrives without cause, ask, "Is this weight my own, or has it been laid upon me?" When doubt rises at the very edge of breakthrough, whisper, "This may be resistance because I am nearing light." When conflict erupts without reason, remember, this may be more than just words. It may be the hand of division seeking to break unity. By living this way, you do not merely endure attacks, you transmute them. The desert becomes your teacher, the storm your trainer, the shadow your unwelcome but clarifying companion. Do not mistake this for a life of constant paranoia. To recognize spiritual attacks is not to cower in fear, always suspecting darkness behind every corner. It is to walk awake like a sailor who knows the ocean brings storms, yet trusts the compass. It is to know that resistance will come, but awareness arms you, wisdom steadies you, and truth becomes your anchor. When you live with such clarity, attacks lose their sharpness. They may still arrive, but they can no longer deceive you into believing that you are powerless, unworthy, or abandoned. You begin to stand taller, not because the winds have ceased, but because you have learned to bend without breaking. And here lies the final secret. Every time you recognize and withstand an attack, your light grows stronger. The forces that sought to diminish you end up amplifying you, as iron sharpened by friction becomes a blade. Your awareness becomes contagious. Others who are still walking blind may look at you and ask, "How do you remain steady when everything shakes?" And in your answer, you do not only guard your own soul, you become a lantern for others. Recognition is not merely survival, It is leadership, a ripple of awakening that spreads outward into the collective fabric of humanity. So, as we draw this exploration to its close, hear this call. Guard your garden, walk through your deserts, build your tower, carry your lantern, and do not forget the star that guides you. You are more than the whispers, more than the illusions, more than the shadows. You are light wrapped in flesh, spirit clothed in time, a chosen participant in a drama that stretches across realms. Your role is not to live untouched by struggle, but to live unbroken by it, to shine all the brighter because of it. When the weight presses again, as it surely will, pause, recognize, reframe, resist, and then rise. For the story of spiritual attacks is not truly about the attacks at all. It is about the awakening they provoke, the strength they summon, and the luminous resilience they carve into your soul. This is your call to transformation, to stop living as though blindfolded, to see clearly the invisible currents shaping your life, and to remember that every resistance you face is secretly an announcement of your significance. Take this awareness into your days, into your nights, into your work, your relationships, your prayers, your silence. Let it remind you that nothing, no desert, no storm, no shadow, can diminish the truth of who you are. You are the lamp. You are the garden. You are the tower. And the story of your becoming is greater than any attack against it.